Hi, the last of this year's Oscar movies that I finally got round to seeing is Wicked, John Chu's adaptation of the stage musical, which is in turn based on a book, which is in turn very loosely adapted from Frank Baum's Wizard of Oz. It is the untold story of Elphaba, the Wicked Witch of the West, and how, in fact, she wasn't wicked at all, but was simply a victim of a cruel society that conspired to make her a villain. And it's very hard for me to summon up any enthusiasm because I hated this. Um, the play runs a little under 3 hours, and the film is about that long, but it's only the first half of the plot. It is horribly protracted in showing Elphaba's story as she goes to university in Oz and travels by train, because what better way is there of portraying a fantasy world than making everything that's wonderful and unique much more bland by importing all the boringness of ordinary life. So far from being the fantasy dream world of Dorothy Gale's imagination, it's a world with banks and businesses and universities and racism and class systems, and it just cheapens the whole thing. Um, she goes to university and becomes roommates with Galinda, who's going to become the Good Witch eventually. And initially, they don't get on because they're so different, but then they become friends for no reason. And it's just so lacking in any kind of depth or seriousness. It's so pathetically adolescent. There is little, there is nothing here any more intelligent or sophisticated than you would see in an early 1970s live action Disney feature. It's on the same intellectual level as The Cat from Outer Space. And yet, it has a bottomless sense of its own self importance. It is so convinced of it being a very important and serious work with powerful songs that are almost all incredibly boring and forgettable, and awful pop orchestration that sounds like it's from a early 90s covers album. It's such a easily dislikable film because it's so idiotic. There is no there is no intelligence to this at all. The plot twists are incredibly easy to guess. The casting is a mess because you have uh, you have big stars coming in and playing these very flat, dull characters. Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo are passable, playing these extremely flat, uninteresting two main characters. Jeff Goldblum plays the wizard and is just doing the Jeff Goldblum performance. There's subplots about the animals of Oz losing the ability to speak, which is sort of vaguely pointed out but doesn't really go anywhere and gets forgotten about halfway through. It's such a absolute shambles of a film, so convinced of its own importance and sophistication, and yet an insult, I think, to most teenagers in how simplistic and childish it is. It's obviously one of the worst films I saw from 2024. It's absolutely awful. It's borderline unwatchable. I struggled my way through it out of obligation. I hated it. I can't imagine anything worse than having to sit through a second film that's coming out later this year when it ends with an entirely serviceable ending. We don't need any more from that. Apparently, the second half, spoilers, completely rewrites the plot of The Wizard of Oz, so that we have more childish ethical dilemmas that no adult could reasonably take seriously. We have in this one we have a subplot about Elphaba having a sister who uses a wheelchair, and it turns out it's because her mother ate too many magic flowers while she was pregnant. It's just so ridiculous and so impossible to treat with any kind of seriousness. I'm stunned that it's regarded as a great film. I can only imagine that it's striking some chord with people that I'm not aware of. And it really makes me think that theatre kids who think that this story about being an outsider and being yourself and fighting through and ignoring those who treat you as a villain, with the best will in the world, these children have not been bullied enough. um, I hated this movie. I can't comprehend why anyone would like it. If someone can explain it to me in simple terms, then please do so elsewhere. But it's one of the worst films I saw this year and irredeemable.